genre.
In the world of Hollywood, movies get greenlit and redlit. They get remade and rebooted. But we are the Ideal. I'm Sam Gasch, and you are listening to Ideal Remake. Thank you for listening to Ideal Remake. We take movies that either have been, will be, or should be remade and talk about what the ideal version of that remake would be. Today, after they recruited me in a comic book store, we're teaming up to take down the vampires plaguing Santa Carla. So, Scott, Nick, is The Lost Boys a movie that has been, will be, or should be remade?
It hasn't. They've tried.
Have they?
Multiple times. Rob Thomas, the creator of iZombie and Veronica Mars, he's been trying to make a Lost Boys TV show for years.
Oh.
He's shot 2 pilots, and both of them were turned down by the CW.
Wow.
But, yeah.
That's in particular a bummer because both Veronica Mars and the Lost Boys are, like, to me, the epitome of, like, California edge, noir, cool, you know?
And it's, I think, if I remember correctly, his pitch was the first season would be in the 80s, and then subsequent seasons would be in different decades to show, like, the lifespan of, like, this crew of Lost Boys, like, throughout California history, I guess.
That's a little
It's a
more
good pitch.
like Cinemax than CW, though.
I think ultimately that's why they passed. I believe that was the pitch on the first one, and they were like, this is going to be too expensive. We're not doing it. And so then he pitched a more traditional Lost Boys, like, reboot, and then they passed on that because they were like, we can only take one thing from... It was like something where it was like, it was produced by the same people that produced a different pilot, and they could only afford to take one of their pilots and not both. Weird, like, network money financing stuff. But
weird.
Yeah, and they ended up going with the other one instead. But yeah.
I mean...
This is supposed to premiere, like, the year after Vampire Diaries went off the air.
That is weird.
Yeah.
I mean, I only learned that there were sequels to this movie when we were sitting down to watch it, I don't know, a few nights ago.
I don't know what you're talking about.
All right, fair enough. I will say within the canon of Lost Boys that the shirtless buff guy who plays the saxophone, apparently he still does that, and he's going to be playing near L.A. in November. Corey Feldman will be there. It's a thing.
Yeah, he was like he was the what band? What band did he work for? He's the saxophonist for a band, like a major like a big like group.
Cool.
I was like their touring saxophonist or whatever, and then just like they were in town. I think it was the thing where it was like they were in town playing a show in Santa Barbara, and Joel Schumacher was like, "Let's get this guy on set."
His name is Tim Capello.
Yeah.
Nick, what's your history with the Lost Boys?
I have been a fan of this movie since I was a teenager. I remember renting it on physical Netflix back in the 2000s. That was what I first used Netflix for, primarily when I got my first subscription, is, I can start watching all these cult movies that I can't find at my local video store. So that was like the first time I watched Evil Dead 2, The Warriors, The Puffy Chair, like a lot of mumblecore stuff. And another early movie that I watched that I'd always heard filmmakers, Gen X filmmakers that I idolized, and, movie nerds that were writing blogs at the time, they would always talk about The Lost Boys as this, like, seminal pop culture kind of classic. And I was also in my Kevin Smith era at the time. So, yeah, I hunted this one down and I watched it. And I remember being really entranced by the vibes and the music, I Still Believe, the sax song that, like that's an all-time movie. Cry Little Sister is an all-time movie song for me. Yeah, I haven't rewatched this one in a long time, so it's not like a favorite of mine, but I think it's a movie that leaves a lasting memory if you watch it at the right time.
I think that's fair. Scott, what's your backstory with the Lost Boys?
My dad has, I don't know if he still does, but he had, growing up, a real obsession with vampires. Read vampire books all the time, watched vampire movies all the time. And the thing about vampire stuff in general is, like, outside of like, a lot of vampire movies will be like kind of sexy, and so there'll be like some nudity or whatever. But in general, like gore and violence is pretty limited in vampire stuff because it's like they're like, the blood is going straight from your body into their body. So there's not like a lot of, you can go around a lot of the gore and everything. So I watched a ton of vampire movies with my dad growing up all the time. Stuff that I probably shouldn't have seen. And he took me to theaters to see From Dusk Till Dawn and just made me stand outside the theater during the strip club scene.
How humiliating.
Which you might say, isn't that the whole back half of the movie? Once they turned into vampires, he brought me back in.
All right,
but
get back in here.
Yeah.
It's not sexy anymore.
All right.
I'm just imagining being someone
Tarantino-
else in the theater, just being like, oh man, that dad and kid are seeing the... And then just like the dad escorts the child out, and then like 15 minutes later, the dad goes and escorts the child back in.
Yes, that's exactly what happened. I was 11 years old.
That's amazing. That's a sketch.
In fact, I might have been 10. It might have come out before my 11th birthday. So yeah. In any event, lots of vampire movies, and one of those was definitely The Lost Boys. And I really liked The Lost Boys as a kid because there were kids in it. It was like my two favorite movies that he would show me was like Monster Squad and Lost Boys, because there's people my age or close to my age in these movies. Mm-hmm. And so I really liked those. Yeah, so I had really fond memories of this, and like... just like cinematically, historically, to like vampires and stuff. It's like, oh, this is the movie that invented the way that the vampires look in Buffy. Like, this is what Whedon stole it from. And he was like, yeah, like the brow and the demon face thing that comes from this movie, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah.
And I remember when I realized that at some point in my, like, when I was in high school, I was like, whoa.
It is weird that Whedon didn't do the foot thing, though.
The foot thing?
Yeah, like they've got their weird vampire feet that can clamp on to the ceiling so they can sleep upside down.
Yeah, that is true. They don't have he didn't do the weird vampire feet. That's probably too hard to do on a TV budget back then.
Probably, but it delighted me.
Yeah, it is delightful. That is true.
Like every time Buffy went to visit Angel, he's like hanging upside down in a corner.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of like vampire lore that's like I hadn't seen anywhere other than in this movie of just like, oh, they're bats. They sleep upside down. And I was just like, that's great. And then they show the feet and I was like, that's gross. Don't like it.
Yeah. So, and then there was a long period of time where I didn't watch this movie. And then I watched it a few years ago. And I was like, there's a lot of this that I like, but there's a lot of this that I feel like could be updated. And... I like my favorite aspects of this are like the Frog Brothers and the comic book store and the movie store, like all of that stuff is a lot of fun. But the actual Lost Boys stuff is a little too melodramatic for me. I know this is probably sacrilege to a lot of people, but it's a little too like 80s music video. It's a lot of like fog and a lot of like wispy curtains and just like it just very much looks like an 80s music video. And that's what you get when you get Joel Schumacher, and you also get a queer horror classic with this movie. This is like a queer horror 101 movie. Of like, oh, this came out in the height of the AIDS pandemic, and that's what this whole movie is about. It's about the fear that people had of being gay and AIDS and blood and fear. Like all of that is in here, and and it's directed by Joel Schumacher, a queer filmmaker himself. So that is a big part of this legacy. And so I love all of that stuff. I love learning about that stuff. I love hearing queer readings of the film and finding out about all of that stuff. Highly recommend a Shudder documentary series called Queer for Fear, directed by Brian Fuller. It's just an examination of like queer horror. It's really phenomenal. Yeah, I do think that there's a lot to change and improve. I think that people should be open to a remake of The Lost Boys, because the thing about it is like this movie's not exactly timeless. Like it's pretty 80s. And so you could very much update this and make it a little more relevant without like harming anything about the the history and importance of this film in culture. I think it's kind of like a perfect movie to remake because of that. So it's so 80s. It's like it's as 80s as like Top Gun.
Yeah.
It's like it's so 80s.
And I think there's a lot of subtext in the movie as it exists that can be made into text.
Sure, text or switched. I think
Yes.
you could change because we're not in the middle of the AIDS epidemic anymore. You know, like we can do something else that's queer horror, and you know, maybe explore something else instead of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought up Top Gun, Scott, because that's actually a movie I thought about earlier today. It bears a lot, has a lot in common with The Lost Boys, in that it is so moody in the way that, you know, like it is such a vibe, and it is so cinema and is the decade, and kind of encapsulates a sort of alt movement that was happening underground at the same time of Top Gun's much more like top 40 radio, 4th of July barbecue vibes. But like Top Gun, during Lost Boys, every time you actually sit down and watch it, you're like, oh, that's right. There is like a lot of this that just goes right out of my brain every time I watch this movie. You think of the 40-minute version of Top Gun.
Yep.
Or Lost Boys, and you're like, oh, that's right. There's all this other stuff.
Yep. 100%. It is definitely one of those movies, without a doubt.
Fair.
So.
I didn't know there was a 40-minute version of Top Gun.
There isn't. What he's saying is like in your memory.
Got it.
You're remembering a 40-minute version of the movie because like all the memorable moments happen in like a 40, and then there's a bunch of like, you know, playing you know, the song 3 times in a row.
Whereas
like
Rocky 4 actually is just 90 minutes of iconic moments.
Yes, that's true.
Got it. Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool.
I'm curious, though, what was your thoughts seeing the movie for the first time, Sam?
So that is the interesting thing, is that this is the first time we've done the 3 of us on a podcast together where I've actually seen the movie we're going to be talking about.
Yeah.
And it's because it's probably the first one I've been able to see. I enjoyed it. It was fun. I don't know if this is the sort of movie that would have appealed to me as a kid. I don't know if it's the sort of movie that I would necessarily go back to, but I enjoyed the viewing experience that I had watching this movie now. I thought it was fun. I thought there were a lot of lines that were enjoyable, and obviously like the line that the movie ends on is such an all-time banger that it's like how do you like that individual thing, that moment is so goddamn good, and it's amazing.
That line is incredible because it's really funny, right, in the moment. It's like a really like funny line, but it's also like obviously like a commentary on queer culture and you know, it's the one thing I couldn't stomach was all the vampires. I was like, well, you just swap out vampires with something else, and I've heard people say that before. And so that's obviously like there's something there, and I think it's stuff like that is why I think queer people really like hyper focus on this movie so much.
Yeah. And then, but you're right, the 80s of it all is very present. It is an exceptionally 80s movie, but like the couple of friends that I watched this with, both former guests of the show, Caitlin Rogers and Presley Peters, were both like fun group to watch it with. We all had fun. We laughed, we cried, we had a lovely time. We watched some amazing saxophone on the beach. Fun times for all.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, it just kind of felt like just another movie night.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like the cultural like touchstone of this movie is so much larger than actually watching the movie, which is exactly what Nick was talking about with Top Gun.
Yeah.
I'm in complete agreement with that. Yeah.
You know, what's a good example though is a good double feature, especially heading into spooky season, would be this movie and Us.
Both shot on the same.
Like
Santa Barbara.
So Santa Cruz Boardwalk. I only know that because I just looked it up.
Yeah,
I don't want to pretend like I do that. And
no. I always get Santa Barbara and Santa Cruz mixed up in my head. You're right. It's Santa Cruz.
And in fact, there's even a moment, like an Easter egg moment in Us, where they're walking along the beach, and the mom or the dad say like, "Hey, you know, baby, do you want to go up? They're filming a movie up there. You want to watch them?" And Jordan Peele has said in interviews, the movie they're filming is The Lost Boys.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Mm-hmm.
So, you know, Jordan Peele being like one of our living horror masters, going out of his way to like put this cult Joel Schumacher vampire 80s movie in his movie, that kind of speaks to, even though this is a flawed movie, it still garners a lot of respect for people in the horror community.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Cool. Well, we should probably do a quick walkthrough for people who aren't familiar with the movie. I've only seen it for the first time, so would either of you like to take us through what happened?
Nick, please.
Okay, doing this from memory. I did take notes as I do on podcasts like Franchiseography.
Plug.
We open on. Oh, okay. Well, actually, yes. So the first note I took, listeners, in my notes, is so the movie starts with an aerial shot of the water. That's I guess Santa Cruz Bay. I don't know. I'm a bad Californian, but heading into the boardwalk, and we hear "Cry Little Sister," and the first note that I wrote down is "Cry Little Sister" Church's cover.
Wow. Yeah.
So that is how my remake of The Lost Boys would start: is Church's covering "Cry Little Sister."
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Good.
That's
I
great.
like it.
So we open on this boardwalk where these vampire hoodlums are, well, we don't know that they're vampires yet. They just look like kind of really trashy late 80s California hood rats.
These punks.
These punks with a really expensive wardrobe budget. So they're like, acting a fool and being, causing a commotion. And this cop or security guy is like, "Get out of here, you lost boys." And later you see that some force lifts this guy up into the air while he's getting to his car in the parking lot and kills him. And
It's very like opening of Jaws.
yeah, another California horror classic.
Yeah.
No, not California.
Oh, East Coast. That's right.
Yeah, that's East Coast. Yeah.
You're
I
right.
also always think of that as being California, but I also know, but yeah, no, it's not.
Yeah.
The telltale
Like
is everyone's.
Martha's Vineyard or something, right?
Everyone talks like they're in a Stephen King novel. That's a telltale sign.
Yeah.
Good indicator. Yeah, it's true.
And then we meet the Emersons. There's the mom, played by Diane Wiest. I do have her name Lucy. The older brother, Michael Emerson, played by
Not
Jason-
Michael Emerson.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, Michael Emerson, not played by Michael Emerson.
That's funny. Jason Patrick, right?
Yeah.
80s heartthrob. And Corey Haim, rest in peace, plays the younger brother and arguably the protagonist of this movie, maybe? Sam Emerson. I think it's like 50-50 Michael Sam.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about if we want that to be the case in our remake. So they're moving in with their grandpa. There's this joke where the grandpa's pretending to be dead on the ground.
It was very strange. I completely forgot that happened, but yes.
Oh, for sure.
This guy's like a legendary like movie grandpa.
All-time
Like,
movie grandpa.
All-time movie grandpa, without a doubt.
He was great. I have no notes about him. He was exceptionally good.
Yeah. No, dig him up, have him play the role again.
Yeah.
What possibly metaphorical homophobia aside. Great character.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Well, I'll get to that metaphor when we get to the end of the movie, but continue.
sure, yeah. So the Emersons go to the boardwalk to like just hang around and hang out, and yeah, we meet also rest in peace the great Edward Herrmann from Gilmore Girls, playing the kind of goofy, adorkable guy that works at the video store.
Yes.
Owns it, I think. Right?
Owns it. That's true. He owns it.
Yeah.
And then we've referenced it a couple times already, but Corey Haim goes to a comic book store that is seemingly owned by these two boys, the Frog Brothers.
Their parents are sleeping behind the counter. It's fine.
One of which is played by Corey Feldman, and I unfortunately don't have the other actor's name in front of me. He's like the 21 Jump Street guy that isn't Johnny Depp,
Right. Yeah.
And as a kid, just to kind of take a step back, also kind of explaining my Kevin Smith phase, I just thought if the second coolest thing you could do as a kid from watching movies is own an indie radio station or do a school radio station, the coolest thing you can do is own or work at a comic book store.
That is true.
So as a kid watching the Frog Brothers be like these two best friends that like owned their own comic book store and just worked at it and got to hang out all day, I was like, these are the coolest movie characters in the world.
Yeah. It's like how Lana Lang owned that coffee shop in Smallville while going to high school.
Yeah.
Scott, we've never talked about the Lost Boys being an influence on Geek by Night, but I think on a subconscious level, there are kind of Elliot Gibson parallels to the Frog Brothers.
Yeah, probably, definitely subconscious. Because, like, yeah, by the time I started working on Geek by Night, I was it'd probably been 10 years since I'd watched The Lost Boys, so it was definitely not on the forefront of my mind.
I'm speculating now, but I'm guessing this is a Kevin Smith favorite.
Probably.
So
yeah.
It would be weird if it wasn't.
So I would
That's
say
true.
if I was doing my like Darwinian chart, it would be Frog Brothers, Dante Randall, Elliot Gibson.
Yeah, that's probably more accurate. Yeah, for sure.
So the Frog Brothers keep giving Corey Haim, Sam, comic books, and they're like, "This right here, don't think of it as comic book. Think of it as a survival manual." And Sam's like, "Okay."
That's a pretty good Feldman, honestly.
I mean, that's yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, wow, I'm there. I'm in the movie.
It's like he's in the room.
Yeah.
Scott, it's me, Corey Feldman.
Oh wow.
Do you want to meet one of my angels?
Oh man.
Wait, look, I don't. Corey Feldman's one of my clients.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's no. But it's so I'm used to hearing his voice all the time, and so it's just very weird that Nick's impression is really close. It's close. I would say it's closer to modern day Corey Feldman than child Corey Feldman.
Sure.
But I mean, what are you going to do?
So speaking of Corey Feldman's voice, when I was scrolling through Letterboxd looking at reviews of this movie, multiple people and like the highest rated reviews all brought up Corey Feldman doing a deep adult voice while playing his character and how distracting it was. Did either of you notice that?
Not at all.
No.
Yeah. I just reads like that's something a teenage boy does. Like teenage boys do like, hey, I'm going to, you know what I mean? And that's kind of how I always,
I mean, I definitely got the impression that they were trying to seem like tougher than they were, but that seemed like that was the character they were doing.
For sure. Yeah.
For sure. So that's
weird.
Me.
Yeah,
weird thing to hyper focus on.
That's
reviewers.
so strange.
Yeah.
So Diane Wiest, Lucy, the mom, has a meet cute with Michael Herman's character. His name is
Max. His name is Max.
Max. Thank you so much. I don't have the actor's name they played in front of me, but yeah, Max. So then Michael meets, or they go to that concert where they meet the saxophone guy.
Yeah. Well, they don't meet the saxophone guy. They are entertained by the saxophone guy.
Yeah, it's great. And like, I wondered, I don't think about this movie a lot, but this is such, I can imagine a teenage Nick in Texas watching this being like, wow, California. This must happen every night.
It's either this or the Beach Boys. Beach Boys during the day, this at night.
Like, so while they're, and you know, great turnout. There's a lot of kids out on the beach that night.
Yeah. It's a very well-populated town for a town that is the murder capital of the world or whatever it is.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, and that's actually something that there's a moment that the Emerson brothers have with Grandpa where they're like, is it true that there's like a lot of murders here? And the Grandpa's like, let me put it this way. If they all came out of the ground, we'd have a population problem. So while at the concert, Michael sees a really cute girl named Star that's hanging out and goes over to flirt with her, but then realizes Star is a part of this, like, the group of hoodlums that we saw, led by Kiefer Sutherland. You got Alex Winter in there. There's a guy named Marco with a K.
And then there are two other people.
And there are additional vampires. Their most memorable scenes are their deaths. That's the only way I'm able to tell them apart.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, and then there's the kid. The
Right, of course, the little kid.
Well, we see the kid. Do we meet the kid at this point, too? We must.
I think so.
I think he's there, but it just looks like he's like somebody's little brother that's like hanging around or something.
Yeah.
And so, not to do like a full walkthrough of the movie, Michael kind of falls in with these hoodlums, these vampire kids, learns that they're vampires, and then becomes a vampire.
After they make him drink blood.
After they make him drink blood, we get a very memorable scene is the Chinese food scene, where he makes the rice turn into maggots and the lo mein noodles turn into like worms. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so while the part of the movie that I kind of found the most thematically interesting or emotionally interesting this time was Sam, the younger brother, watching his brother slowly change and become more unrecognizable, it kind of reminded me of like when you have an older sibling, they go through puberty and they start changing and their interests start changing and they stop. And, you know, I think they go out of their way to make Sam still be into like comic books and vampires and more childlike, whereas Michael is going out with these sexy vampires and doing bad stuff and getting into like and it's like kind of scary. I imagine from Sam's point of view of like, why is my brother changing? I don't understand what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's also a reading of it that I've read other like queer theorists like read into this, which is that Sam is gay but is closeted and is afraid of coming out because he's like young and he's like got these mixed up feelings, but then he sees his brother going out and hanging out with these guys and just being out there and open, and it like freaks him out.
That's
And
cool.
I was like, that's a really interesting like reading on that, because it's an angle on like sort of a gay awakening story that you don't see a lot, which is like a sort of non-romantic version. It's more just like totally internal of
It's
like
more about the freedom and the sense of self that all the other vampires seem to have, the unapologeticness.
Right. But he's still like, he's afraid of it a little bit because he like feels it inside of himself, but it's like, I don't know, you know,
like that makes me think of like the topic or the idea of passing in society, where like you know, the vampires are choosing to be like they are drawing attention. They want you to notice them. And as a teenager, I was very much the opposite, where I very much went outside to try and blend in. And like wouldn't want all eyes on me to be like, what's that kid wearing? You know, why is he wearing, you know, eye makeup or, you know, nail polish, you know? And so the idea of like, Sam finding that scary, but also a little bit like enticing or fascinating, because he becomes obsessed with vampires, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for a kid who's says he isn't really into horror comics, to go fully the other way and be like, I need to know everything.
Yeah. My mom's got a
course,
date with a vampire.
Yeah, and then of course the Frog Brothers are like, I mean, you got to kill your brother. Like, you'll kill your brother, you'll feel better.
Just kill him.
It'll be fine.
So yeah, we have that scene where like they invite the Frog Brothers to they're having a family. They're gonna Diane Weiss is going to bring Max over for dinner, and then the Frog Brothers sabotage it with Sam because they're convinced that he's a vampire. I really like Diane Weist's performance in this. I think she kind of just has a really grounded single mom.
Yeah. Who you clearly like see, because the whole thing that they talk about in the movie, like they make a joke, is like most women after a divorce have some money, and it's like she's completely broke. She's like, I didn't want to deal with getting any money from my ex. I just wanted to get out of there, get the kids out of there. Otherwise, it'd this whole dragged out thing.
Yeah.
Which, fair. But like, so you can like see that there's a little bit of pain, and then she's also just like, this is the first time I've been on a date with someone who's genuinely interested in me in so long. Just let me have this. And they're like, the kids are like, kind of yeah, kind of no. They don't know what to do.
Diane Weiss is so good at adding grounded sort of just like grounded baseline, just sweetness to genre roles, because she does it's like it's the same kind of role that she plays in Edward Scissorhands. I love her so much. She's the best.
Like, as Michael's transformation becomes more drastic, Diane Weiss's concern and kind of distress, and you know, her being like, what's happening to you? That's so grounded and real. And it kind of shakes things back into reality of like, oh, what does she think is happening to him? You know? And then there's like the climax is pretty memorable, where they finally just attack the vampires. We get Death by Stereo, where a vampire, that's a band, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
Before even that, we have them all team up. They realize that David's got to be the head vampire, and the Frog Brothers and Michael and Sam all go to the vampire hideout, because Michael knows where it is, to try to go kill the vampires. And they find the vampire coffin, and it's just like a place where they're all sleeping upside down. And Michael rescues Star and I think the little kid whose name I don't remember.
Yeah, because so that's the other thing. not to take it back even further, is that they've drinking blood, and so they're half vampire, but they're not fully vampire because they have to feed on a living person in order to become full-blown vampire. They just drink the vampire blood, and that's it. So they have vampire powers, but they're not going to like live forever or anything like that. But to stop the process, there's no stopping the process at this point. They would just be half vampires for a long time, presumably. But in order to stop the process, there's a hierarchy of the vampires where if you kill the vampire on top, all the head vampire, all the other vampires would turn back into humans. But they can't be full vampires in order for that to happen. So there was like, right? Because there's no hope for like Alex Winter or, Kiefer Sutherland, right?
Yeah, no, I think they say specifically that if they kill the head vampire, the half vampires go back to being human.
Right. So that's why they're like, okay, now suddenly we need to kill everybody because we don't want to be half vampires. We don't want to become
Corey,
vampires.
the Frog Brothers were encouraging vampire murder since the beginning. Like, they wanted to kill everybody from the start. And they continue to threaten to want to kill Star and Michael. But they're like, all right, fine. We'll do it your way. We'll go after this other group first. Right. And they do actually kill Alex Winters. They stake him through the heart. And he screams real loud. They kill Alex Winters. And I was as surprised as anybody that it worked.
Yeah, they certainly were.
That it wasn't a movie about them accidentally killing a human kid.
Yeah. Well, when you see someone sleeping upside down, hanging from your feet from the rafters, it's like, all right, well, I feel comfortable with this level of murder, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, so he's the one they murder underground, and then that pisses off the other vampires.
Yeah, David wakes up after that and tries to chase them down and kill them, but they make it outside into the sun, and which David can't go into because vampire.
Right.
And so then that leads them to like bunker in at the main household, and then the climax happens where the three remaining vampires of David and the other two.
Ooh, the Vampires of David. That's a cool title.
There you go.
Yeah, you get the "This is my house, I have to defend it."
Of course,
montage.
Yeah. You needed that. You had to have. So you have death by stereo. You have death by bathtub.
Holy water bathtub.
Holy water bathtub. Very
vampire traps.
Yeah, and then they vampire Home Alone their house.
Yes, they do.
Or Vampire Skyfall if you prefer.
Oh yeah, sure.
Or Vampire Straw Dogs if you're over the age of 50.
Fair.
Yeah, great.
And then, you think all hope is lost. I genuinely forgot about this moment, so it was kind of a fist bump moment when the grandpa comes and just drives through the house with the truck.
Yeah, because what you find out is that they kill Kiefer Sutherland.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they successfully kill Bathtub Vampire. Yeah. They successfully kill Stereo Vampire. And then David and Michael have this big battle. They're going back and forth. And then the Grandpa had been a big taxidermist. And so there's like a room just full of dead animals. And Michael ends up managing to get David all the way back and like stabs him through with like antelope antlers or something.
Right.
And he kills David.
Which kills him, but they don't stop being vampires, so they're like, wait a minute, we're not the lead vampire. And then Max shows up, and it's like, it was me all along. Yeah, his whole plan was that he asked David to turn them into vampires because he had a thing for Diane Wiest and was like, I want her to be my vampire queen, so turn her kids so that she has no choice but to be turned by me, and then we'll all be together, a happy family, etc. And they're like, cool, yeah, but we don't want to be vampires, so no thank you.
Stabby. And then he's going to kill, like, he has both of them. He's going to kill them. Diane Wiest is going to give in, and then Grandpa drives through the house with his giant truck, and, like, Max gets impaled on, like, a giant, like, log that Grandpa had in his truck.
Yeah.
This big moment. And then he goes to the fridge, pulls out one of his secret root beers from his special shelf, and he says, Santa Carla would be a great town if it weren't for all the fucking vampires.
Yeah.
There's a great scene in retrospect when you go back and watch the movie again early on. The first time you meet Edward Herman at the video store. All the vampire gang bursts into the video store, and they're causing a ruckus, and Edward Herman just stares them down and is like, what did I tell you about bringing your bullshit in here? And there's like a close-up on Kiefer Sutherland and a close-up on Edward Herman. And you think you're like, oh, that guy is lucky. But in retrospect, it's like, I told you assholes to fucking cool it, Yeah. And it's so
well, that's what made me
good.
suspicious of him, because like he basically says the same line that the security guard said to them earlier of, I told you don't come in here, or you're not welcome here, or something. And then he lives, but they don't. or the other guy did. So I'm like, well, clearly something's up.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's true.
That's very true, Sam. They like the cop says you are not welcome here. Like,
Yep.
We don't want your kind here.
Yep. They don't make it subtle. Like the queer reading of this movie is not subtle.
It's not a subtle movie.
No.
Yeah.
Every time Kiefer Sutherland, like David and Michael are like looking at each other, it's always in like a tight close up of where they're the only two people in the frame.
Sure.
There's that really great moment where he's thinking about Jamie Gertz, and then her visage like fades away, and then David's comes in bigger and more prominent. You're like, yeah. It's not subtle.
Yeah. So the thing I wanted to mention is something Presley mentioned after we finished watching the movie is one of the theories that people have about this movie. Before I get to that, so on his special shelf, Grandpa. So when everyone moves into Grandpa's house, he's like, "All right, this is my fridge. This second shelf, that's my shelf. That's my root beer and my double stuffed Oreos." And it was at that moment that I realized that double stuffed Oreos were a lot older than I thought they were.
Yeah. I think that every time I watch this, I always forget.
So part of me is convinced that they tried making double stuffed Oreos and it didn't take, and then 15 years later they tried again and everyone was like, why would we do anything else? And Oreo's just like, fuck, I guess now it works, whatever.
Yeah.
Because I vaguely remember them introducing double stuffed Oreos.
I feel like I do too, but maybe it's a Mandela effect.
Because he called them double-filled Oreos.
There's a chance that this is a custom job. Or he's double stuffing them himself and creating new double stuffed Oreos and keeping them like in a plastic bag in his fridge.
It's all possible. We never see him eat any of them, so we don't know.
Yeah.
But the actual theory that people have is that because it's his special root beer, and so there's a theory that Grandpa is a vampire and the root beers that he's drinking are blood.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I think that's a fun
cool.
theory.
Is he ever in sunlight?
He is at the beginning of the movie.
But he's under the shed.
We meet him outside, and then he goes out on the date before sundown, like with the widow, whatever.
Okay.
Well. So, but like if he's like a half vampire, like Michael was or something, but then I guess he's like, because there's feeding and then there's feeding, because like Michael could keep drinking the half wine or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's true.
But so that's the theory behind it.
Right.
I don't know. It's interesting. It's because he has a special shelf, and like, why do you already have a special shelf? But I guess he was ready for his family to move in.
I know what they're gonna do. They're gonna go straight for my root beer.
Yeah,
these fucking kids.
Those double-filled Oreos are for Grandpa. I've licked every single one.
Can you remember where they were coming from originally? Where they were moving from?
I don't know if they said.
I have no idea.
I think it was like New Mexico. There's a part in the comic book
Phoenix.
Story.
They're moving from Phoenix.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Because there's a part where he's meeting the Frog Brothers, Sam, and he's like, yeah, I used to live in Phoenix, but I'm stuck here in Santa Cruz. I'm like, yeah, bullshit. Like, any kids, like, I used to have it all in Phoenix.
Yeah.
Now I just have this dumb amusement park and an amazing beach.
Sexy 80s Southern California.
What sort of Sam moves from Arizona to California?
Whoa! Crazy. Art imitating life.
Yeah. I mean, I had that conversation after watching Romeo and Michelle. Romeo and Michelle, they go back to their high school, their 10-year high school reunion in Tucson, Arizona, after having lived going and living in LA for 10 years. I'm like, that's what I did. I did that. I know where they are right now. That's about where mine was.
This is my life.
I mean, I couldn't get away with saying I invented Post-its, but in retrospect, I'm pretty sure people did that at the 10-year high school reunion, and I wish now I'd seen the movie so that I got the joke.
That's funny.
You need to do that one eventually on the show.
I think you already did.
Oh, damn. I'll go back and listen to it.
I did. That's why I watched the movie.
Yeah. I remember because I remember how you edited your face onto the poster.
I don't remember. It's around here somewhere. But yeah, that's the movie as it exists. So obviously we're going to make this movie way more gay, but other than that, what are we going to do for the Lost Boys?
Okay, so I'm going to take a shot in the dark and say that no one did this the way that I am going to pitch it real quick. And then so I'm just going to pitch it and I'm going to step back and I'm just going to help you guys with your like more straightforward pitch.
God forbid we do one of these episodes where we end up with 2 movies.
Yeah, well, but I also didn't cast mine for reasons because it would be like extreme difficulty casting wise.
Okay, fair enough.
The original pitch for The Lost Boys before Joel Schumacher came in and said, I like this, but I think we need everybody to be super sexy and like changed everything about it, brought in his own writer and everything. The original pitch of this, the reason why it's called The Lost Boys is because everyone in this was 12.
Oh.
And so they were all kids. And it was what Nick was describing about like the brother being like, you're changing, man. Like it was more like about that. But I was just thinking like that mixed with like the fact that like nowadays, like, you know, because there's so much more queer representation, kids tend to like figure out that they're queer much earlier in life than they used to. And so like I just thought that there would be a really cool like queer reading of like coming of age and everything, and having all of the Lost Boys be Lost Boys. Like this was a Peter Pan riff. That's what this was originally, the intention of it. And instead, you know, what we get is, you know, really fun and great, but it's not exactly a Peter Pan riff. Basically, they all look 30. So yeah, that would be my pitch, would be like, if you were to remake it to do something really different and stand out, it would be to age everybody down to like 12 years old and have that be the story.
I think here's how I think you make that movie, because I now understand why you were like, this is a difficult movie to cast, because like they would all be like 10, 11-year-old boys.
I'm not casting like 12-year-olds.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You're not
like
going through like the kid in every show you've watched in the past year and being like, okay, that kid.
I was like, I don't want to make this episode a full-time job.
So
I mean, it'd be a real shame if someone like really tainted their search history by Googling Hollywood children.
So the version of that movie that I'm conjuring up listening to you, Scott, is like Luca Guadagnino, like casting a bunch of unknowns who have never even been in a movie before, and it's like Beasts of the Southern Wild meets Bones and all.
But buddy, I'm not gonna lie, you literally just named my director.
Holy
like,
shit!
on my thing, that is who I had. So we are on exactly the same wavelength. Like
I know you so
completely simpatico.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah,
that's great.
1000%. Yeah,
like an A24 Lost Boys, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's exactly what I'm picturing. Like A20, like a Call Me by Your Name, age down, obviously, but like mix that with, what am I thinking? Let the Right One In, you know?
Yeah,
like that. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Like the creepiness of like Kirsten Dunst in Interview with the Vampire.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So anyway, it's cool, and I like that pitch, but like that's not fun to do on the show because I literally I refuse to cast all of those children.
Would you have like Sam and Michael be like twins, and like one of them is like still the twin doing comic books and stuff, and one of them is like being slightly more adult, but they are the same age?
Yeah, that's what I was picturing. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And it's like it literally just 2 kids that have been the same their whole lives, and all of a sudden one of them still wants to cling on to childhood, and the other one is willing to embrace adulthood.
Right.
You know what'd be cool is like if they like adopt a new member and it's like Wendy, like a Wendy proxy. And it's like they've never had a girl before. And again, it's not romantic, but just having that outside force kind of be like the inciting incident that kind of makes the dynamic start to shift, you know?
Yeah. Which I think makes more sense with the kid version of this, because like you're not going to get like a 12-year-old into your crew by using like a girl as a lure at 12 years old, you know? So
not necessarily, no.
Not necessarily, right. So it's I think it would need to be a different dynamic, which I think making one of them a girl, I think would be probably the way to go. Like
the way that
like
Wendy,
sister.
Wendy sort of crashes into Neverland. They're like, what the fuck? We didn't want you here.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, in my version, I kind of like, I cast them both separately, but in my head, I kind of had the idea of like, we're past the subtlety of the 80s. And when I really meant it when I said taking the subtext and making it text, and just like, I don't see for there to be a reason for Star and David to necessarily be separate people. I think that Michael can be drawn to the David character in the same way that he was drawn to the Star character, and just like, oh my God, but like, and like this David character is still doing all these crazy things, but there's still just something so alluring about this guy.
Yeah, totally.
And
totally.
I don't necessarily have them both being like kids. I had like my Michael being around like 20 years old and my David being like 28 in a little bit Call Me by Your Name, but like not as deeply creepy.
Right.
But like that little bit of the age gap of like just full confidence versus someone who hasn't figured out confidence yet.
Right. Sure.
I also,
with the exception of my adults, none of my actors are older than. I don't think there's anyone 30. I think everyone is in their 20s or younger.
yeah, same.
Nice.
Definitely me too. I also, so one of the things that I kind of played around with was just the nature of family. And so for my Michael, I cast a black guy, but for my Sam, I cast a white kid. And because I really wanted to lean on the fact of like they're like, well, just kill your brother, just kill him. And it's like, no, he's my brother. And like the whole whatever, like there was the adopted child and then there's the, I don't know, biological child, whatever it's called. And like, it doesn't matter. They're brothers. And I really wanted to keep hitting that home of like he keeps saying, he's my brother. Right. And like I wanted it to be a little bit of a mixed family to really also like drive home the point of like Michael's also figuring out who he is, like both within the family and without of it. That's a sentence. That's how that turn of phrase works.
You're just a writer. No big deal.
Yeah, no one will judge me.
You're a writer, not a talker.
Yeah. Normally I need 2-3 drafts to get any sentence to work.
What were your grand sort of narrative designs, Nick?
I think we're complimenting each other really well because unlike you, Scott, I literally was like, oh, I don't have a, Margot Robbie as Freddy Krueger reinvention in my pocket this time, like a bold take on this thing. So I kind of just relied on like a kick-ass cast and I'm really proud of my writer director. And also like, I'll be honest, I don't think the Michael, David, Jason Patrick, Kiefer Sutherland vibes didn't hit me that much watching it because I just don't think I found those characters very interesting.
For sure.
So whereas Too Fast, Too Furious, you're like, oh my God, Tyrese and Paul Walker fucked before this movie. Like you can't tell me. So like, for example, I did cast a star. Just because like, yeah, I wasn't as like focused on Michael and David this watch through for whatever reason, but I'm loving hearing all of this work being done after the fact.
Yeah. I agree with you. They're pretty, and I feel like that's basically it. I mean, Kiefer Sutherland has presence, but I wouldn't say he's particularly charismatic in this movie, at least not in my estimation.
I mean, when we were watching the movie, we couldn't get past Michael's jawline to pay attention to anything he was saying, but he also didn't say that much.
Yeah.
And then for Kiefer Sutherland's David, it's just like he's doing all of his acting with his eyes. So again, whatever he's saying doesn't really matter.
Hey,
he's saying it with his eyes and with like extreme closeness.
Yes.
Have you noticed the rise of maggots, Michael?
Oh, man. Yeah. He sounds like a therapist most of the time in this movie.
Very relaxed, very calm.
So
it's interesting because one of the other movies I did this season was Dark City, which is another Kiefer Sutherland where he's playing like kind of a creepy weirdo, but a very different kind of creepy weirdo, but from kind of the same era of movies.
Like 10 years apart, but yeah.
Are they?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess Dark City is 90s. I still think of it as 80s, but it's definitely 90s.
Yeah. It's
okay.
like
You're right.
And this is like 87,
87, I think.
Yeah.
This is 87, and that's 97. So it's like it's literally like 10 years apart.
That is 10 years apart. Dark City just feels very 80s to me, but yes, you're correct.
Sure.
They're 10 years apart. But even still, he's playing like weird, creepy Kiefer Sutherland, just very different kinds.
Yeah.
That was kind of his type before Jack Bauer.
That's true. He was like a little bit more of like a character guy.
And they really reinvented him, kind of in a Liam Neeson sort of way.
Yeah. And in the 80s, he played this guy because he basically plays the exact same character in Stand By Me.
There you go.
Yeah. Just not a vampire.
We can't all be Liam Neeson in Darkman.
That's true. No one else can.
Nope.
Have you done Darkman and Stand By Me, Sam?
I've done Darkman. I've never seen Stand By Me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Same problem. You'd have to just Google a bunch of young actors.
Yeah, which I definitely did. You're going to get a whole list of children, and I'm sure the I'm sure the authorities already have that list from me as well.
Yeah. The thing about this movie is like, I don't think that there's anything about the plot that is like broken or anything. It's more to me about like filling in that period of time that is like filled up with 80s like montages and music video sequences with like more story and more stuff. So like, what is in this movie that I feel like you feel like there could be more of? That you could remove those music video sequences and put in like more like character stuff and plot stuff.
Before we even answer that question, Nick, when do you want to set your movie?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's a very good question. I'm kind of more prone to set it in the present because
As am I.
One thing I've kind of learned this year from other movies that are coming out is you can have something with the vibes of a time period without setting it in that time period.
Mm-hmm. Are you specifically referencing Bottoms?
Bottoms, as well as like a lot of horror movies are sort of,
Yeah.
we don't have to set this in the 80s, and we can still have like these sort of 80s vibes.
Mm-hmm.
The Happy Death Day movies,
Uh-huh. I certainly think setting this modern day, right? Like there's that slight complication, which is that like parents don't let their kids just like roam free like they used to. Mm-hmm. But I think that that's something that you can sort of play around with the fact that like Sam listens to their parents and doesn't like just do whatever he wants. And maybe you make their mom like a little more overprotective, a little bit more of a helicopter mom.
Yeah.
And the fact is that like Michael is breaking out every night, like he's waiting for like mom to go to sleep and he sneaks out the window and like goes to hang out with them that way rather than being so out in the open about it so that it's really like, oh, I'm Sam is like stuck having to like cover for his brother and like is holding the same secret that his brother is keeping because he's like, no, but like I'm a good kid and I thought we were both good kids, but now you're not. And like, yeah. So I think there's a way around it of like, he's seeing the allure of like these kids that have no parents and are like free to go do whatever they want.
I think there's actually a couple different ways you can play that. I think there's the really modern take of it, like this mom grew up with the kids in Phoenix, which is a big city, and there's a lot of people there. And she could have had these two kids with both their cell phones have like Find My Friends turned on, and she had access, and she could see where they were at all times. And then all of a sudden, they move back to the small town the mom grew up in, and she's like, I know every inch of this town. I trust you. Like, you can walk everywhere. And all of a sudden, like that tension of being in a big city goes away, because not only is she familiar with it, it's small and she trusts it. And like, no matter what. And you get to have this thing of like, finally when she goes to check her phone to see like where her kids are, Michael has like, she sees where Sam is, but she sees that Michael's Find My Friends is turned off and she has no idea where he is. And that's when she starts to get nervous.
Yeah. Or he just leaves it in his room.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't need his phone.
That's also true.
To hang out with vampires.
That's also true.
I don't think vampires are checking Twitter. Well, nobody is because it's not called Twitter anymore, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
An aspect that I could use more of that I think could be fun is kind of another movie that I rewatched recently, kind of from this a little bit later, is The Craft, which is about a group of witches. And
similar.
Very
That's
similar.
Very similar. It's that's a great double feature actually. Lost Boys and The Craft. Yeah. And that's a killer double feature.
I think the reason a lot of kids found like this was a movie that they rewatched over and over again is the aspect of the friend group or the found family. Mm-hmm. Like the Lost Boys don't have parents. They don't go home. They just hang out in this shitty squalor hideout, eating Chinese food and like making each other laugh and punching each other in the dick. And like when you're 15 to 17, that is like paradise. That's like all you want to do ever.
Yeah.
And
that's true.
And I guess following, The Craft also has was a strong like awakening movie for like a generation of like queer horror nerds or like witch adjacent people. And the concept of I'm not getting home, I'm not getting love or acceptance or feeling seen by my nuclear family. I'm going to run off and find it with these really cool friends that I'll spend all my time with and tell them all my secrets, and we'll cry on each other's shoulders, and it's so emotional. And I think it'd be cool to have the Lost Boys feel more like a crew than they do in the Joel Schumacher version.
Yeah, because it seems like the thing that he's attracted to is just the fact that they're so cool and so attractive. Like, that's it, you know? Like, they don't have, like, a lot of chemistry with each other. So, yeah, having, like, a really strong dynamic, I think, and he fits right in, and they love him.
Yeah,
I think would be
something
really
that bothered me about the original movie is that, like, he's really drawn to Star, and he goes after Star, and then she gets on the motorcycle and drives away. And then he finally finds Star again, and, like, he thinks they're having a moment in connection. And then David shows up, Star gets on the bike, and just, like, David just tells Michael to follow them. And he's just like, I guess, okay. And so I never understood the connection other than the fact that he, like, felt weirdly possessive of Star. Mm-hmm. And so I think exactly what you're saying I feel like he should be drawn to the camaraderie and the community of this really tight group of cool people. And then once he's in there and he's like within that circle, then all of a sudden he starts getting drawn to I'm going to just call it the Star of David character because I've combined them. The real Star of David, the David character. He gets drawn to the David character.
Yes.
And once he's within. First, it's about the community itself. Then it's about the actual personal connection in the relationship.
Yeah, it'd be cool if there was like a moment early on, especially if you're merging the two characters. If there's a moment early on where he sees them and is like, "Oh man, those guys are cool. They like remind me of like my crew back home." And then something happens where they like goof off or whatever, and then like a store owner is like, "Hey, you fucking assholes, get the hell out of here." And then he like steps in, is like, "Whoa, they weren't doing anything." And like he's the only person who defends them, whereas like everyone else is telling them to get the hell out of there. And to them, they're like, "Oh, here we go. This guy doesn't know who we are or what we are." Great. And so they're attracted to that. But like also from Star David's version, like, or from his point of view, he's seeing it as like, "Oh, they like me because I like defended them, like when you know this guy was like, you know, telling them to fuck off." I think having some kind of moment like that would be really cool, where he's like, "I'm doing the right thing," and it's like, dude, these guys are murdering vampires. You're not doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Nick, what kind of like set pieces and things were you looking forward to? Because like we have saxophone player on the beach, but like what is the cool thing happening in Santa Carla right now?
Oh, I would love for Saxophone Man to make an appearance in this. Or, you know, because like I guess the only like action set piece we have is at the very end where they like home alone their house, and you know, death by stereo, death by bathtub, and all that.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think with their characters being aged up, and also just like teens being a little bit more dangerous than they were in the 80s. Like,
oh, I didn't age up my characters.
Or sure,
I
guess
He means
the
from
actors.
mine, I think.
Oh, got it.
Right?
Yeah.
But I guess I just mean like, you know, the Stranger Things. I don't want to see Dustin from Stranger Things cocking a shotgun.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So
Sure.
an example of casting actors that are a bit more like visually older. I'm thinking about like the Fright Night remake where you had Anton Yelchin playing a high schooler.
Right.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
And so, Scott.
For Sam and the Frog Brothers, though, I kept them young.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have any set pieces, Sam?
I don't know. It's tough because, like, again, it's the beach and it's now, and so I feel like the thing that a lot of people do for the beach is just like a cool bonfire on the beach, and just everybody's like all the young kids are just kind of like on their own, no supervision, like they have the bonfire and just like kind of all partying around, which happens in this movie. But then all those people get killed by the Lost Boys. Mm-hmm. And you could even have that be our version of the start of the movie. Instead of starting on a carousel, you start with the bonfire of the beach, and it's all these cool young people hanging out and laughing. You think, oh, these are going to be our main characters. And then they just get massacred. And then we cut to our Sam and Michael moving to Santa Carla, the murder capital of the world.
Cool.
One fun sequence that I would like is I don't know what the context of this is exactly, but they have this amusement boardwalk thing. Mm-hmm. I think that it is a huge missed opportunity to not have a sequence where they all go into a hall of mirrors together to fuck with David, because they know that he won't be able to see them in there.
And so they David or to fuck with Michael?
I'm sorry, yeah, to fuck with Michael, and
That's
like
very funny.
and they all go in there and instantly disappear in the Hall of Mirrors, and then he's like, "What? How the hell did they?"
I'm right here.
And they're just like
That's-
coming out and jumping at him and stuff like that, just to fuck with him. But
So one of the things that happened in this movie that we didn't really touch on, but I think is interesting, is when they're trying to capture Max and prove that he's the head vampire and fail, and they think he's not, they feed him garlic and he eats it and he's like, I love garlic. And then they also hold up a mirror and his reflection is apparent in the mirror. And they ask him later, like, we did all these things to you. How did that work? And he's like, you invited me to your home. That I now have complete power over this, and you have no power over me whatsoever. I'm invited in.
yeah,
You can have them be like within a space that they have total dominion over. They can fluctuate within the realm and the confines of the expected rules of their powers.
yeah, that's true.
It's interesting. You don't see that pop up a lot, where just admitting a vampire in waives all of their other consequences or causes.
Yeah, they're like giveaways. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I
because
don't
there's the old joke of like the whole idea behind welcome mats are a vampire invention, because they can go up to any house that there's a welcome mat, and the mat is welcoming them inside, so they can go inside. It's an old joke, but like, or it's an old viral tweet or something. But like, I've always thought that was interesting. But
An old wives tweet.
But like Max specifically says, "Oh, you're the man of the house. Am I invited in?" Yeah, of course you're invited in.
Yeah.
Great.
He turns it into a charming bit of like, I'm not coming in until the man of the house says that I can, and
Yeah.
but you don't know that it's good. It's a good
I mean,
villainous turn.
All you gotta
Theoretically,
do is
Grandpa's the man of the house, but whatever.
all you gotta do is invite him to the beach, and then he's fine with the sun too. So
Someone please invite me. I have a
please
hack.
just invite me to a day on the beach.
I have a vampire
Well-
hack I'm trying to test out.
You gotta really, I mean, you gotta make sure Michael gets a job as a lifeguard, because that's who the true man of the beach is.
That's true. Are you the man of the beach?
It's very Ken coded.
Yes, I am Ken. Thank you for asking. Okay, yeah. So like, basically, we still want to have the family showing up. Michael in particular is drawn into this particularly cool, super queer, comfortable, older kids environment. Sam is still trying to figure out what's going on with his own life and his own connections with his family. The movie kind of carries on in the same way, but as Scott says, we need to fill it in with more not montages. So like, do we still want Michael to, like, we can replace the hanging on to the railing underneath a train with the Hall of Mirrors, but what else do we need? Like, how else do they play around with A, their own sexuality potentially, and then B, just the world that's been given to them? I mean,
Yeah.
it could be as easy as them going to a thrift store, like a late night thrift store, and just doing all the different varieties of wardrobes. Because like, we've talked about the gay allegory, but there also could very easily be a trans allegory in this movie as well. And in fact, there probably should be.
Or like, just more going back to the craft, just more going into like, who are these vampires? Like, what does Star like to do for fun? Who was Star before she was bit? Marco, what do they have going on? Just like, I'm thinking about, it's also very like Mean Girls, or, I mean, tons of YA narratives where you have the new kid, it's almost like an RPG, dropped into a friend group where they get to come around and be like, oh, I really like Marco, but he doesn't know. Like, we're mad, we had a fight. And then like Michael gets to be the one to like bring everyone together and be like just the best vampire boy.
Yeah.
So
That's not very Paragon.
thrifting is fun. I really like, even if it's not the bridge thing, them sort of taking advantage of like, it's very punk rock middle finger of like, we can't die. So like, maybe jumping in front of a train right before it hits you,
Well,
Or
what's the
like-
modern equivalent of that?
I mean, we still have trains. We can still do
We
that.
do. Do we?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they could absolutely be... I mean, yeah, they could absolutely be playing in traffic. They absolutely could be playing with the heights of it all. I mean, hell,
I
they
think-
can go bungee jumping and they can cut their own cord.
I was gonna say, taking the Ferris wheel up to the top and jumping out of it.
Yeah.
You
be
know,
cool.
you mentioned, and I'm not trying to like counter you, but you mentioned like, oh well, why would Michael bring his phone? They're not checking social media. But what if they were? And they were like, you know what? The Earth's got like 100 years left. So like, we're like this new generation of vampires that kind of doesn't give a shit if people find out about us because we'll just kill them. And like half the people don't like we do share stuff on TikTok and we're like we have a following, but everyone thinks it's fake anyway. So like it doesn't matter. Like
oh, that's fun. I like that.
Is fun.
Our,
I like that too.
our
I also thought
ancestors
of
were so
set piece.
aggro about it, but it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense.
Yeah,
that make total sense to me. It's just like hashtag new vamp.
Yeah. All of that
but
is an update.
My additional set piece is like we see constant shots of the roller coaster. Let's have them get in the roller coaster, most of them, and then David just sets a skateboard on the back, sets on the skateboard and holds onto the back of the roller coaster, and then the roller coaster goes, and he's like holding onto the back of the roller coaster and doing everything kind of like by hand. And then he suggests Michael do the same thing, and Michael's like, "What the fuck? Absolutely not. Are you insane?
Yeah.
Maybe I am insane, or maybe the world's insane."
Or like if you know, the difference between Michael and David is like David's been a vampire longer, so his respect for life has dwindled a lot. Like a human life isn't very valuable to him. So like the idea of like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if like this carousel went off the edges, or like if this bus blew up, or just all these, wouldn't that be funny? Kind of edgelord humor. But like Michael's like, that's not funny, dude. Like you could have killed someone, and he like stops it, and it's almost like a little bit of a superhero-y moment, kind of playing with vampires having strength and speed powers.
I like that.
I like that. And you could even have like them one pushing the car, one pulling the car back, push, pull, and they get closer and closer and closer, and then they just start making out, and the car's fine.
Yeah, yeah. I also, I definitely want like another like feeding scene like in this one, that is like very like allegorical that was happening in this, where they attacked those group of guys.
Well, one of the amazing things that you can do is you can, like, in the same way that we had the bonfire on the beach earlier, you can have a movie night on the beach, and they could absolutely be watching Nosferatu or Dawn of the Dead at any time, like, and our version of a drinking game is anytime someone dies in the movie, we get to kill someone.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah.
And that's so so their game is to match the person's scream with the scream in the movie. So everyone who's watching thinks it's like kind of a stereophonic like experience.
I like. Yeah, that's good. That is good.
And that's how they gamify it. And then all of a sudden they take it too far, and then there's just more screaming, and people are like, this fucking sound is, what the hell's going on with it? They're playing the wrong part of the sound for this movie.
Yeah.
And then people get up frustrated and leave, and then when the lights come on, we find that there's just blood everywhere.
That's good.
Does that work?
I like the game for sure.
Or even like, and that kind of has like, I think about the metaphor of going off and like finding yourself sexually and figuring out like, I think I'm interested in this. I want to explore this, and then finding out like, oh, some people are into that and I'm not. And then there are limits in you. It's not a monolith where like you go out and you find out like, okay, I don't like this. And our version of that is like, you know, Michael is disturbed by, you know, loss of, you know, this kind of like more macabre extreme, but they've been vampires so much longer that, you know, they've reached this point where we don't care about that anymore, Michael. Like,
right.
I mean, that is something they talk about in like What We Do in the Shadows, of like Matt Berry just being like, you live long enough, you're going to try everything once.
Sure.
And then you're going to forget about it, and you're going to try it again.
Yeah. Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, and then I feel like the one last thing we really should talk about before we get into casting is kind of our final showpiece of like the big Home Alone house at the end. Like, we can certainly have the kids stealing holy water again. It was, I mean, honestly, all of the same bits and pieces, like the stereo. I mean, I would potentially plug it into like a speaker system, TV, more than a stereo. But like holy water in the bath, all that other stuff, that kind of still works.
Yeah, I don't have any huge game changing like set piece ideas.
That all kind of works for me.
I feel like the vampire traps, I mean, you know, you could like update them and like, you know, make them a little more.
You can use augmented reality.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's something you could do, but like I'm not directing this movie, so I don't have to.
Well, okay, so the one thing that I would add in is they had a bunch of super soakers filled with holy water, and I still think that's fun, but I think that what you can do now is, especially because Grandpa's clearly super into like camping and like hunting and like outdoorsmanship, of like sometimes the thing you really, really need is a really good solar light. And so they have all
Oh,
their
yeah.
like flashlights and things like charged up, and so all of a sudden they have this dark house, and the vampires come in and then they hit them with these like
the UV,
really high
yeah.
powered UV lights.
Right. That's good. That's really good.
That's real good. Yeah.
That's your modernization of it.
You play Solar Power by Lord.
Yeah. Oh man,
But
no,
then
they
when Max finally happens, because he was invited in, that stuff doesn't affect him because he was invited into the home, and all the rest of them are invaders.
Yeah, they shine the UV light, and then that's how they push them back into the bathtubs with the holy water.
Yeah.
Like they stumble backwards out of the UV and into the holy water, and it's just like holy water, UV light, holy water, UV light. Yeah, there's just no escape.
Or and like you can even lean on the fact of like the mirrors don't work on them, but like you can shine it into the mirror, and the mirror reflects it onto the person, and they get. You don't have like, what are you gonna do? Hit me now? No. Boom.
Yeah,
and it,
yeah,
bounces off the mirror and
absolutely.
hits them.
Nice.
Good. Okay. Set pieces. So, Scott, you are going to be the decider for our castings.
Okay.
Because you don't have these. So
I have
Nick and
I have a few, but not any of the mains.
Okay,
really.
that's fair.
Yeah.
I assume you have the adults.
I have the adults, and I have a Frog Brothers and a Sam, but
Okay.
I'm
Well,
also
then we'll
not.
just
It is what it is. Yeah.
We'll go through it and see. Let's start with Michael then.
Okay.
Nick, who did you have for Michael?
Yeah, I'm still so proud of guessing Luca. That's so cool. My Michael that I had like a runner-up that I had that I can bring up, but the Michael that I settled on is played by Xolo Maridueña.
Oh, that's good.
So he played a college graduate in Blue Beetle, and some people they're kind of have like an unwritten like once you play past, you can't go back. You can't go back to playing a high schooler once you've played a non-high schooler. You know,
I have a feeling it was strategic.
oh, for
him.
sure. He was like,
Yeah.
look, I'm already playing college grads. You know, I'm not going to
Yeah.
be Jenna Ortega. So he's like, I think 25, maybe.
Something like that.
Is he older?
No, he is. No, he's like 22.
He's 22. Okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah. He's
So
22.
he's my Michael. You know, we could still do like senior in high school. I actually, it's been so long since I watched this movie, I thought Michael was like home from college or like a college dropout. And then at some point I'm like, no, this would not be their relationship. It looked like you get the Diane Weiss could still ground Michael, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so my thoughts are, okay, Michael senior, maybe. How do you feel, Sam?
No, I felt the same. I thought of Michael as being like 17 and Sam as being like 11 or 12.
I also like the idea of him being like just graduated from high school, like in that like lull
okay.
of like, where am I going? Like, am
What
I
do
going
I
to go
do
to
next?
college? Am I going to like get a job? Like, what am I doing? You know?
What am I doing moving across the country with my family if I'm just going to end up moving again to go to college?
Right. And then you get the added thing of like, he's hanging out with these people all the time. And his mom's like, I mean, don't you have other things that you need to be doing? Like you have your whole life to be putting together. He's
also,
like, little do you
like-
know, that's exactly what I'm doing.
All my friends were going to go to community college, and now I'm not a part of that community anymore. I don't know where I'm going to go to school because I can't
Right.
afford like a school.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
School is diminutive. I can't afford to go to a non-community college.
Right.
So
or worse, like she had plans and they with the divorce,
Right.
like he just doesn't get to go to college now. And
Yeah,
it's
also
it's
fair.
because of the divorce. So he actually holds a grudge a little
Yeah,
bit.
also fair.
Yeah.
All of that works. So my Michael, he was in Daybreak, so he's kind of done like vampire stuff before, but he was also in like Atlanta and is a little bit more known from Booksmart. It's an actor named Austin Crute,
who are they in Booksmart?
the gay theater kid.
Oh, okay.
I tried very hard to cast queer people for that whole group. I mean, I only cast Michael, David, and Star, like just in case we didn't combine them.
I cast
But, like,
everybody.
Well, you're gonna have people, but like so for me, Austin Crute is a queer actor, my David's a queer actor, my Star is a queer actor, and like that was important to me because I knew that was something that that was gonna be important to us. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, and I did not do that for the younger kids because I don't want to assign something to kids that are still trying to figure it out themselves. But like whatever, that was something that I tried to do. So that was where I landed for Michael.
Okay. I'm not I am not revealing any choices until we get to the end and I read the whole thing out. So between
Can
casting.
I
Oh,
offer
okay.
my runner-up Michael just for the sake of having an out
Sure.
there? So
Sure.
for a while, my Michael was Caleb McLaughlin, aka Lucas from Stranger Things, because for Jolo and Caleb McLaughlin, I was like, who do I want to see go on a journey of like, and like who's likable? I thought about Lucas when he was trying to get all the basketball kids to like him. And you were like, oh, Lucas, no, these aren't your friends. Your friends are, these kids don't get how awesome you are. And so I'm like, oh, maybe like Caleb McLaughlin would be good. And even though I think he's like exactly the same age as Xolo Maridueña, maybe it gets the Stranger Things thing to me, where I just don't picture him being like a little kid and not like an adult man, which I think he is, like in his early 20s.
I mean, he's 1 year younger than Xolo
Xolo.
Maridueña. Yeah, he's 21. Xolo's 22.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah.
Cool.
All right. David, Sam.
So for my David, I went with a little, like, he is, I don't know, 5-6 years older, but also very a queer actor. We definitely know him from The Flash, where he was Wally West. He's also in Love, Simon. He's Keenan Lonsdale.
What did you say their most like famous credit was?
They were Wally West he was Wally West in The Flash.
Okie dokie. Yeah, I bailed I bailed at that point. So that's more Scott's territory.
I mean, he's also great in Legends of Tomorrow.
Yeah, that's so interesting that he is so old. He looks like a child.
Right. That's
still.
why I thought he'd be good. I mean, he's got that good vampire stuff in him.
Yeah.
He also, one of the things I thought was interesting is I was on his IMDb credits, and he was a judge for a little bit on one of the Drag Race shows.
Oh, okay. That's fun.
Yeah.
Nick, who's your David?
My David is Timothy Chalamet.
Oh, shit.
Big
That's
guns.
a very different choice.
Yeah.
I was like, movie star, who's going to get butts in seats? Every teenager in America, what's going to get them like doing fan edits? And it's sexy goth SoCal Timothy Chalamet vampire.
I mean, you're not wrong.
You're not wrong. So I'm kind of past, like, this is nothing against you or the guy as Timothy Chalamet. It's like, have we ever seen him be like savage? Like, we've seen him being like posh rude in Little Women, but I can't think of him as being like savage, like
it's because,
bares his teeth.
It's because you didn't watch the movie where he literally eats people.
Oh,
Because
that's a movie that happens? I'm not
Yes.
aware of this movie. What movie is this?
There's a movie called Bones and All. It's actually very Lost Boys influenced or inspired.
Fair enough.
But it's you, Sam. You can't watch it.
Yeah,
Fair.
definitely
I
not.
agree. Okay, cool.
But he plays a cannibal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, then there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, well, again, it's up to Scott.
Yep.
Who do we got next? And keep in mind, I have them combined. So like I have Star as well, but like in my head, this version of this character is just one of the other Lost Boys.
Yeah. Okay. So who's your star, Nick?
My star is an actor named Havana Rose Liu, most recently seen in Bottoms, and a movie that we talked about on DGT, a Hulu movie where like this girl's on the run and she runs into a diner and there's a storm and one of the diners might be a killer.
Right.
She was the lead in that.
Fun.
She is very striking looking.
She is a model, and she just turned in one of my favorite comic performances in the past like decade in Bottoms. That's like an all-time comedic cast movie, and she just can't. I have no idea who she was before watching Bottoms, and it was just like, who the fuck is this? And so I kind of pictured Star being like, yeah, like that scene where Michael's like, who is that? And she is kind of like the Penny Lane in Almost Famous, like the one that kind of guide Michael into this world, and is also, like someone that Michael's like, I have to save her. If we keep that, the idea of like, it's very biker movie coded, which I think is kind of a result of Joel Schumacher's age and generation. But like Star, I get the feeling of like, hey, that's Dino's gal. You don't mess with Dino's gal,
Right. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Is that right, Sam?
So my star is a non-binary actor. They were, I think, probably most well known for their role in Pose, but they also had a role in Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, and they had a role in A Babysitter's Guide to Monster Hunting. This is India Moore.
I'm somewhat familiar with their work. I haven't seen a lot of that. I haven't seen a lot of a couple of those shows, but
Yeah. So like I said,
this is interesting because you both adapted this character in an interesting way, because you, like Sam, you went with someone who has a very similar vibe to the Star in the movie, like a big poofy hair, like just like very. Whereas like Nick went with
on
like
appearances vibe, but in personality not.
Right. Appearances wise, like very similar. Like I'm looking at pictures of India, and like I'm like, oh yeah, I could see them playing, Jamie Gertz in a remake of something.
Yeah.
I have seen India more in the Escape Room sequel, Escape Room Tournament of Champions.
How'd they do?
So
Did they make it out? Did they escape?
I salute them. But they do star. I don't believe so, but the final girl in that movie is Taylor Russell, who was in Bones and All with Timothy Chalamet. So it's all connected.
There we go.
Wow. It's a small town.
It is a small town.
It's a small town, Santa Carla. I mean, they have a lovely roller coaster, but small
All right,
town.
so Sam?
Star.
No.
Oh,
Sam is the next one that's doing.
What you mean. That's yeah.
Yes.
Sam. So I actually do have someone for Sam.
Please.
This is just like the first person that came to my mind in terms of like who's like a Corey Haim type right now, and I was like, oh, Jacob Tremblay.
Sure.
So that's who I went with Jacob Tremblay. I'm curious who you guys came up with though.
Room, Dante,
Yes.
or not Dante. What's the little
Scott,
bastard's
do you
name?
know how old Jacob Tremblay is?
Yeah, he's like 14, right?
He's 16.
16, yeah.
Okay.
So, but
Yeah.
I mean, he looks. Isn't Sam supposed to be younger?
I cast an 11 or 12-year-old. There's a very big difference between 11 and 12-year-old and a 16-year-old.
You guys an 11-year-old?
I mean, I think he's 12, my kid.
Oh. How old is he? How old is Sam supposed to be in the movie?
I
thought he was
pictured
supposed
like
to be 12.
I pictured like high school freshman.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought too.
I mean, I cast a 13-year-old, and I entered high school as a 13-year-old.
Oh, okay, yeah.
No, that's not true. I was 14. I was
okay,
14,
but 16 is it? No one 16 years old is playing a 16-year-old in anything ever.
I think the difference is like when you go through your growth spurt. And I think Jacob Tremblay has, and I think the character I cast has not.
Okay,
That's, I
interesting.
think, the difference.
Well, all right. Well, whatever.
Yeah. No, that's fine. Continue.
Okay, so
Nick,
Sam,
who
I
did
think
you
it's your
have?
turn to go.
Oh, is it? Okay, great.
Who is your Sam?
I like I said, I cast, so where I cast Austin Crew, which is a black performer, I cast a white kid because I was trying to do the adopted family kind of thing. So this kid is in Cocaine Bear. I think he's most well known for Sweet Tooth. I most recently, like literally the last episode of One Piece, I was like, oh, he's that kid. He plays young Sanji in One Piece. His name is Christian Convery.
Oh, is he the little boy that does cocaine in Cocaine Bear? The little best friend?
I haven't seen Cocaine Bear.
That makes sense.
But in Sweet Tooth, he's the kid with the antlers.
Okay, Scott watched that. I didn't watch that.
Well, I watched like half of the first season.
Okay.
Okay.
He's really good in One Piece.
I haven't gotten to him yet in One Piece. I have 2 episodes left. I'm on the Nami episode.
I also only have 2 episodes left.
Wow.
I'm trying to see what he looks like right now.
He's
and
young
I can't-
Sanji. He's the kid who's
young on the
stuck
rocks.
on the rock.
He
Yeah,
was
on the
great.
rock with right?
Okay.
So, Scott, you had Jacob Tremblay. Sam had young Sanji.
Oh yeah. Who did you have?
So with the Xolo Maridueña Michael, the sibling that I cast for Sam is Xochitl Gomez from Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness as America Chavez. And Sam may remember I tried casting her last time I was on the show as Rocky the Red Ranger in the Power Rangers movie.
I mean, you also cast Xolo Maridueña as well. I think we ended up going with Xolo for
Yeah,
Rocky.
that's true. I hadn't seen Blue Beetle yet. And I was like, I'll trust you, buddy. Yeah. And you were right. Because now I have. And the movie's great. So I was thinking of like Sam in the comic book store, like, hey, whatever, kind of a snot-nosed kid. And I could just see Xochitl Gomez kind of filling that like teenager kind of punk, but kind of a dork energy. The only performance I've seen from her is Doctor Strange, but kind of like, I follow a lot of like fashion pop culture Instagrams, and some of them be like, here's Xochitl Gomez at this thing. And she always kind of has like a more punkish energy than I think America Chavez had.
I think that's fair.
But I guess it's worth bringing up since we've been talking about like age and like teens and preteens and that kind of like being a tween or whatever. I did have a backup. So keeping in mind Caleb McLaughlin playing Michael, my Sam was an actor whom I actually haven't seen in a live action performance yet, but it's an actor, I believe their name is Micah Abbey, who was the voice of Donatello in Mutant Mayhem.
You son of a bitch. I cast him as one of the Frog Brothers.
Whoa, that's crazy.
I cast him as one of the Frog Brothers, and then earlier when we were talking about Corey Feldman, I started laughing to myself because I realized I recast Donatello with Donatello.
That's very funny.
Yeah.
But I was kind of thinking more like the version of this movie you'd see in a mall, like the Fright Night remake. I think it's Xochitl Gomez, who I think's like still a teenager. I don't think because we talked about this in Power Rangers,
17.
Sam. Yeah, she's 17.
She's 17.
So yeah, that's kind of like, Micah Abbey is like my safety, but primary Xochitl Gomez as Sam.
Yeah.
Okay. We should have just done this together.
Because also I had a little sister, so it was kind of like a little sister watching her older brother go through this crazy thing. That was kind of gross.
For sure.
Yeah, I also have a little sister.
Okay. Well, speaking of the Froggers,
Okay.
do we have frog? I have frog siblings.
I also have frog siblings.
I went with Micah Abbey and Priya Ferguson. Priya Ferguson from Stranger Things plays the sister.
Oh, cool. America.
Yeah. Oh, is
Erica.
that her name? America?
Erica rhymes with America. That's what I'm remembering.
Oh yeah, Erica. Yeah. Erica from Stranger Things, and then Micah Abbey from Ninja Turtles as the frog siblings. That's my
great.
pair.
That's awesome. That's chaotic. That's really fun.
Yeah, I know.
Nick, who did you have?
That's what I liked about it. Is like they have a lot of energy. These two,
Erica,
together, that would be nuts.
But she's such a little cool girl. Almost like Lucy in Peanuts. Erica. Stranger Things. To see her being a weird little mall rat comic book fan. I don't know what that looks like. For sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Nick, who are your Froggers?
My Frog Brothers are two young actors that I've been become really big fans of them. The first one is Elsie Fisher, who fans might remember from 8th grade back in 2018. They have established a really strong character actor career. They were on that Stephen King show where they played the daughter of the lady from Misery. They had a really memorable supporting turn in Barry, in season 3 of Barry. They're in the Texas Chainsaw remake. They are currently in The Summer I Turned Pretty, which I haven't seen, where that character is non-binary. What I learned while researching Elsie Fisher is they have yet to go on public in a magazine or on Twitter or whatever and say I'm this. This is what kind of thing I am. I'm a this. And so it's been gathered through friends and people that they've worked with that they use they, them pronouns, but they have not identified any kind of way, so just honoring that. But, I've gathered that they use they, them pronouns.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other frog brother that I've cast, Alan.
They were also just in My Best Friend's Exorcist.
Yes.
Last year.
We were talking about that on DGT.
Yeah.
And they've kind of, I know 8th grade is by far their most iconic performance so far, but their look now is just, I own a comic book store. And I am a shit poster with a private Twitter and with the weirdest, darkest sense of humor. And I've never seen them play a character like that yet. That kind of they created Evil Paddington on Twitter. And
okay.
That went viral. And so it's that kind of vibe. So the other frog, Alan, is an actor who I just was introduced to this summer, Zoe Tarakis, from horror movie sensation Talk to Me.
Oh.
So Zoe Tarakis, on the other hand, has been publicly I am non-binary. That is how I identify, and I will talk about that in interviews about being a non-binary actor. And so without even thinking about it, because I was just that person and that person. And then in researching them, I was that's such an interesting, two different ways that young kind of Gen Z celebrities are navigating being a public person.
Yeah.
Of one person.
I also, in the version where you guys were talking about them doing TikToks at their hideout.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that the Frog Brothers also have a TikTok that they do together about hunting vampires is also a really fun angle.
And and my kind of background with the Frog Brothers, because one thought I had watching the movie with Corey Feldman is they should not be owning a comic book store. They're teenagers. And so I like the idea that Alan Frog and Edgar Frog are almost kind of fake names they've had to come up with Like, they've moved from town to town a couple times at this point, and this is just like, we're brothers, okay?
It's very silly.
So yeah,
That's great. I love that. They've got a good like look together too. Like I'm picturing them standing next to each other, and I'm like, I like that. Yeah.
They're very fun. Your Alan Frog is older than your Michael, but other than that,
Yeah. All right.
it bothers me just because the nature of the movie is we have the kids and I didn't cast them as the same age. I cast them as the older teen and the younger teen, and so like for me, that was a very distinct law.
Okay.
Like some of them look like adults and can be played by adults, and I was very specific in my casting that I like tried very hard to get kids.
who are your frogs?
My frogs are. My Edgar Frog has been in Sesame Street. He was in like SVU. I think he's more well known for Cha Cha Real Smooth. It's a young actor named Colton Osario.
Okay.
Scott, have you seen Cha Cha Real Smooth yet?
I have not.
You're gonna love it when you do. It's really good.
Oh.
And then, as long as we're talking about Fishers, my Alan Frog is the young girl in Blonde. She also was in General Hospital. She's Life of Beth. If you just got to the Nami episode, she's young Nami. Her name is Lily. Her name is Lily Fisher.
Oh no, was she young Marilyn Monroe in Blonde?
Yeah,
That was an abominable movie.
I haven't seen it, but like, she's good enough to get the role, I guess.
Yeah, I'm glad you're staying booked and busy. That's
Yeah, so it's just like good enough to get that role, but like more importantly, like I did not watch that movie.
sure.
That is not a movie that should be celebrated. It's one of those things where it's like celebrate the performance, but shun the movie.
Yeah, I mean she was something.
But yeah, it's so Colton Osario, Lily Fisher. Lily Fisher's actually even younger, but it's just like it's like again another siblings and young kids to kind of be young kids to match with my Christian Convery, because again, very distinct younger sibling to the older siblings. The older sibling is going off and living a life that the younger sibling isn't yet at a point where they completely understand, and that was important to me simply because like that's the nature of the movie as represented, and it's kids who are just on the cusp of kind of starting to figure out who they are and kind of the things that they're into, as opposed to they know who they are, they know what they're into, and now they're starting to experiment with that sort of thing.
Nice.
That's who I had for the frogs. In terms of people I have left, I have Lucy, Grandpa, and Max.
Yeah.
I have Lucy. I have Grandpa. I have Marco, Alex Winter's character, and then the vampire that dies in a bathtub, Paul, and the vampire that does Death by Stereo, Dwayne. And
Well,
I have
let's hear-
and I have a Max.
Honestly, we can get your Alex Winters, your bathtub, and your stereo
Sure.
all right now because
Okay,
you're
cool.
just gonna get those.
Yeah. Let's get your other vamps.
So, as the character Marco,
Other than Max.
arguably the kind of most iconic one, just because it's Alex Winter, and it's like, oh my god, it's Bill. It's cool. So for him, I had maybe kind of weirdly the biggest name in the movie so far, Troye Sivan. Troye Sivan, I've also pronounced. He is was a YouTuber back in the 10s, but has since become a really big like Australian pop star. Been in a few movies. Most recently, he was in The Idol, where he was one of the more memorable parts of that. He's like a huge pop star, and honestly, you know, like, I wasn't getting like the queer subtext in this when I was recording, but he's also been like just a huge kind of like, I don't know, just like his videos are all very like. I think Joel Schumacher would be a fan of Troye Sivan's like visual aesthetics. You know what I mean? Just kind of that same kind of like cool, hyper real, hyper sexy kind of Tony Scott. But he's a really good actor, and he's kind of ageless. I know he's like in his 20s. So
28.
that's 28. So that's Marco, Troye Sivan. For
Okay.
Paul, the one who dies in a bathtub, I cast another sort of actor, model, skateboarder, Evan Mock, who I fell in love with in the Gossip Girl remake on Max, the one to watch for HBO. He has this kind of like, he was a film nerd, kind of soft-spoken, like bi skater kid that was always kind of like, oh, I don't know. I've never kissed a boy. I don't know how nothing works. But like, he's so striking. I was like, oh, it'd be cool to cast him as like a really aggressive, like comfortable, confident, sexy vampire, because he still has that like look, but kind of more of like a bad boy performance from this young actor. And finally, Dwayne, Death by Stereo vampire. He had kind of a mullet, kind of a cool 80s mullet, and had like a strong jaw, almost rivaling Michael's. So I cast an actor with a similar look by the name of Joey Howard King, who played Prince Eric in the live-action Little Mermaid. And I just think he has good vibes, but also, he played Prince Eric, super wholesome, super like romance cover. So I want him in leather, in eye makeup, playing like gross, shady, like beach vampire.
Sometimes every time he poses, like you can, like the wind picks up and carries his hair a little bit.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure.
Good. I like it.
So yeah, those are my 3 hench vamps.
All right.
Good.
That's good.
So then we should probably talk about Lucy, the mom, next.
Lucy, yeah.
Did you have a Lucy?
I cast...
Please.
Yeah, I did. I just went on like first instinct vibes.
Oh, cool.
In terms of like what I'd want to see. And I went with Marissa Tomei.
Great.
Just because, like, one, I got to get my Italian representation in here somewhere. and B, I like her as like the mom who's been divorced. I like that she's a little older, and I like that, like, especially because of who I cast as Max, but I like that she's a little older, and so she just has, I feel like she can channel that Diane Weiss kind of vibe.
For sure.
Yeah, I went with Marissa Tomei.
Yeah.
Fair.
What about you, Sam?
So I went with look, though not demeanor again. And I actually, for the remaining 3, this is where I put my A-listers. So I was thinking someone who would be a good mom to a couple of kids who just doesn't really want to put up with any of her shit. But, good old Molly Ringwald.
Oh.
Archie's mom.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what she's known for best.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not old.
Like the audience we're supposed to be making this movie for, Sam. Nick?
My mom, my Lucy Emerson, is Zoe Saldana.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because I think would be really cool. What I liked about the mom in this Diane Weiss's performance is she's so sunshine and innocence. And like you almost kind of you get the sense that Michael and Sam are protective of her in a way, but then also immediately in those moments where she's like chastising Michael or she'd be like, Sam, you ruined my date. I fucking needed this, buddy. You see her strength. And it reminded me a lot of like my mom is also kind of like ray of sunshine. And I'm like, oh, I have to protect her. But then it's like, oh my God, how dare I think for a second that, she needs protection because she has this like unassuming. And with Zoe Saldana, you're like, that strength because she's Gamora, she's Avatar, she's Ahura, she's
the title character Avatar.
She's Detective John Avatar.
Yeah.
But look, none of us know any of their names.
No, Neytiri, Sam, that joke's 11 years old. But like the innocence, so I can't think of her playing like a sweet character like ray of sunshine, so it's almost like the strength is assumed because it's Zoe Saldana, but then also you get to see her kind of play like more of a bright character.
Yeah, you're like typing.
That is a good way to guarantee this movie makes $1 billion.
Sure, yeah.
That's true.
That's
you're like casting against type in like a really interesting way.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all.
Okay, so we doing Grandpa next or Max next?
I feel like we got to end with Grandpa.
Okay, so Max.
Yeah, Nick, who's your Max?
My Max is Sam Richardson from Murder Mystery and a stupid amount of stuff over the past few years. I just think he's like adorkable in that kind of like pre-Ted Lasso, Jason Sudeikis way. Where
very unassuming.
Like, hey, I want a video store, but also he's cute. So you're like, oh yeah, get it, Zoe Saldana. But then, like, it's fun. He's like the last dude you would expect to be like the head vampire. And
right, but he played that asshole African king
in
guy
Ted Lasso,
or whatever.
that's right, yeah.
In Ted Lasso. So like that he's capable of being a total asshole also. So yeah, that's good. Sure. I like that.
Yeah.
Sam?
I kind of also went with someone who's like, I try to think of the actor who just on the face of it, I don't think any of us would ever suspect of wrongdoing ever. I think we just all just assume this guy's just the nicest person ever, just a great guy. He just seems like a genuinely decent dude. And that would be so heartbreaking when it turns out that Mark Ruffalo wants to kill us all.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That would be I would want to see that just because I want to see Mark Ruffalo like play like a villain. I don't think Has that ever happened?
That's exactly it. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's too
that's
likable.
weird. Interesting.
He's kind of an asshole in The Kids Are All Right, but a very like believable one.
Yeah.
He's more like he's an asshole in Spotlight too, but he's an asshole who gets results.
Yeah, in the other one, he's like more of a scumbag than an
That's
asshole.
true.
I
That's
would say.
true.
Yeah. So I again, because my Lucy was Marissa Tomei, I went with a little bit of an older actor for my Max. But I was like, who is the guy that I would never in a million years believe would be the head vampire? And it would be everybody's favorite dad, Sandy Cohen. So I went with Peter Gallagher.
Ooh, that's good.
That is an on-brand casting.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Also suave, capable of being like, heartthrob.
Yeah. All right, that brings us to Grandpa. Mine is I'm just going to throw it out there. It's Mark Hamill. Just because I find
that's good.
I find the idea of Mark Hamill playing like a curmudgeonly grandpa really funny. Yeah.
I mean, that's great casting. It's so great that I also have Mark Hamill playing Grandpa.
That's so funny. Wow.
Who else could possibly do it?
Nick? Who else could possibly do it?
My grandpa is an actor named Edward Lee Gibson. Who
you had such an opportunity.
Has to do the funniest thing, yeah. He is a phenomenal, legendary stage actor, but a lot of audiences, including me, first fell in love with him through his performance in The Bear.
Oh, yeah. Man.
As one of the cooks who's just having a little bit of a hard time adjusting to the rapid changes going on at the restaurant.
Yeah, he's really good on that show. All right. Well, that takes us to like writer and director. Do you guys have hyphenates? Do you have separate writers, directors? What's the deal?
I have separate. And I actually had them flipped, and I was like, no, that doesn't work. And I switched them from one was my writer, one was my director, and I said, no, that doesn't work. And I flipped them to writer, director.
Fascinating. Okay.
Yeah. Because they both are writer-directors, but I think my writer works better as the writer, and my director works better as the director.
What about you, Nick? Do you have a hyphenate or separate?
Mine are separate as well.
Okay, cool. Nick guessed Luca. I also had a backup, which is a writer-director, Jane Schoenbrunn, who directed We're All Going to the World's Fair.
Ooh.
Yeah, Jane is a trans filmmaker, and yeah, she made this like really creepy, like sort of found footage-y kind of movie. It's not really found footage, but it's like found footage adjacent, and really creepy. Nick and I both really liked it, and I think that she would do something really interesting with this.
Cool.
But that's just my backup kind of idea, but I'm very curious about what you guys have. So let's start with writer, and we'll start with Sam. Who is your writer?
I went with the writer who I realized that a lot of my cast were black kids, and so I kind of wanted to lean into that. So I went with the writer behind Creed 2 and They Cloned Tyrone. It's a writer named Jewel Taylor. So he one of those writers who's kind of like on the rise, although he did Creed 2, which is, pretty big. So hard to argue that he's on the rise. But his most recent success is They Cloned Tyrone, which is supposed to be very good. And then he also did Creed 2, which I know you both are fans of.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Nick, who do you have as writer?
Well, Sam, it's funny that I didn't plan this, but it's funny that you've been really trying to find like cool set pieces in this Lost Boys remake, because I think horror action set pieces have actually become something of a specialty for this writer. My co-screenwriter for the Lost Boys remake is Akilah Cooper. Writer of Megan, The Nun 2, Malignant, just one of the most exciting horror writers coming up in the past few years. And she's just so great at writing like character focused but fun like horror set pieces.
Yeah. Also, if you've ever heard an interview with her, she has the biggest bundle of energy. Like it just sounds like she has been holding back her entire life, and finally people are like, now you can talk about writing, and she's like, oh my god, yes. And then just it's so amazing, like hearing her do interviews and stuff. She's the best.
I've also heard interviews with her. She's delightful.
Yeah. Okay, director. Nick, who's your director?
So my director and co-writer are actually a team whose work I just recently became aware of, but they've been working for a long time. Their names are Danny and Michael Philippou, a.k.a. Raka Raka. directors of Talk to Me.
Oh.
So Talk to Me is probably the horror movie of the year. It's been winning rave reviews. People have been freaking out. It's the box office sleeper hit of the summer. I've been talking about this all month long on DGT, but I famously was not super scared by Talk to Me. But it is a movie that was impeccably directed and captured the crazy, anarchic, like chaotic sense of youth doing stuff they shouldn't be doing and fucking with things they shouldn't be fucking with. That I think they could do really fun stuff with this.
Yeah.
Fun? Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's a really good choice. Sam, who's your director?
I also wanted to lean into the horror movie of the moment, and the horror movie of the moment is on Hulu, and it's called No One Will Save You. And this is a director who also did Love and Monsters, and he did Spontaneous, which also kind of like fit the vibes of like young people figuring out the crazy situation that's going on. And that's a director named Brian Duffield, who is also a writer, but yeah. So like in my initial thing, I was like, oh, Brian Duffield, because he did these 3 things. And then Jewel Taylor to direct. I was like, no, I want to capture like the experience in the writing, and then because I want Brian Duffield to do like the monstrous and the actual set pieces. And so because he's a good director of like crazy monsters and like and wacky things, like not wacky, ominous and terrifying things that are happening, I thought Brian Duffield worked better as director and Jewel Taylor worked better as my writer.
Okay. All right. That's
Just
everything.
For extra credit, I do have a couple of other. I have a score.
Oh.
Please.
Well, I've already kind of set it up, but I want Churches to do the whole score for the movie.
Oh,
Great.
I love that.
Like original songs, kind of have that 80s synth kind of thing.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And I didn't know this, but the Lost Boys, the original one, I don't have their name in front of me, but it is the same DP as Taxi Driver and Raging Bull.
Oh, wild.
Because I was like, it looks so great. Who shot this? And I was like, holy shit. Yeah, Michael Chapman is the director photographer.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, it'd be funny if like this movie
Roger Deakins.
yeah, also had like a stupidly overqualified cinematographer for this Lost Boys remake. And so I was like, oh, it'd be cool to get Dan Louston, who recently shot movies like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, he's Guillermo del Toro's DP. He shot Crimson Peak, Shape of Water, all the John Wick sequels, Nightmare Alley.
Damn.
Wow. I like that. That's great.
So yeah, that's
cool.
my full. That's
Very
everything.
cool.
Good pulls.
Okay, so
A lot of options, God.
Yes, I am putting together my picks right now.
The Lost Boys, spelled Bois.
So
In all roles, Marissa Tomei.
we have the Lost Boys, and in the role of Michael, I have cast Austin Crute. In the role of David, I've cast Timothy Chalamet. Now, the reason for this is because, so in terms of like Michael vibes, like if I'm like looking at the movie and I'm like 1-to-1 with Michael, I was leaning more Caleb McLaughlin, but I loved the idea of Timothy Chalamet as like goth David so much. I was like, Timothy Chalamet and Caleb McLaughlin, like it just doesn't make sense to me. Like this, they're like two. I don't know. But so I went with Austin Crute for Michael because I just felt like there's a little more like visual chemistry there to me. For Star, I went with India Moore. For Sam Emerson, I went with Micah Abbey. For the Frog brothers, I went with Elsie Fisher and Zoe Tarakis. For Marco, we have Troye Sivan, Paul Evan Mock, Dwayne Jonah Hauer King. For Lucy, yes, I did go with Marissa Tomei and Peter Gallagher for Max. and Max, for Grandpa, we went with Mark Hamill because it was 2-1. Sorry, Nick.
Yeah, sorry.
And for writer, I switched things up. I put together a pair, and so my writer for this is Akela Cooper and Brian Duffield as the screenwriters, and the directors are the directors of Talk to Me, Danny and Michael Philippou. So there you go.
Cool. That's our Lost Boys.
That's
Nick,
our Lost Boys.
Scott, are you going to go see this movie?
I would. Hell yes, I would. Are you kidding me? Absolutely. Cool. All right. Well, there we go. That's our Lost Boys. Good job, everybody.
Thank you both for being guests on my podcast again. So now's the time. If there's anything you want to promote, you want to tell people about franchisography and where you'll be mid-October, now's the time to tell them about it.
Yeah, I believe by October we will be in the middle of our Mummy franchise coverage. It was the winner of the 2023 Listeners Pick Tournament. So you better listen to it because it's your fault. And we've had a heck of a time. We had a heck of a time talking about these. Wouldn't you say, Scott?
Yeah, definitely. It was fun. What we talked about, it was like you said on the show. It like ended up being sort of like a platonic ideal franchisography season because it's so complicated with like weird behind the like everything that can go wrong goes wrong with that franchise, and they do like every iteration of like what a franchise does in terms of like it is a reboot of itself. They make a sequel that was a mistake. They try to correct the mistake, and then they reboot it again. So it's just like it very much tells the story of a franchise in the way that we like to tell it. So it really worked out. So yeah,
Good.
It's a good mini series. I think everybody will really like it. Franchisography, wherever you get your podcast.
Yeah. Do you have social medias you want people to follow?
No, we don't use them. At least not for that. So yeah.
I meant personally.
Oh yeah. Do you have a social media you want people to follow, Nick? You don't really post on social media, really.
Yeah, I mean, Instagram at Nick M. Jimenez, Twitter at Nick M. Jimenez. Hopefully it's still free to use by the time you're listening to this. But yeah, that's about it these days.
Yeah, cool. I'm just Scott Carelli on everything, but I don't use X anymore. And I occasionally am on Instagram. I don't post a lot because I just, by default, I'm just like, nobody cares what I have to say. So
it's a podcaster for.
That's fair.
Yeah, exactly. I do enough sharing on podcasts.
I was saying everything that you feel like you want people to see or hear what you have to say, you do that on Discord, which everyone should join. It is the Dueling Genre Discord.
Yeah, that's the best. That's where you can find us.
In the show notes of this very episode. If you are a social media type person, I also don't post all that often, but if you're on BlueSky, so am I. I am at Sam Gasch, SamGasch on BlueSky. Or you can follow the podcast on Instagram, Ideal Remake, spelled like the thing that's in front of you, or that you're listening to, I guess. I suppose you're not looking at your phone while listening to this, but if you are, good for you. I support you. And yeah, the best thing you can do for franchisography, the best thing you can do for Ideal Remake is to go on Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. They really help. It's been a little while since I've gotten a review, and I would like more, and that would be nice. So yeah, we will end this episode the same way we end all episodes. Nick, Scott, what is your favorite quote from the movie The Lost Boys?
I think I gotta go with Death by Stereo.
That's your favorite quote?
That's the whole line. Death by Stereo.
Oh, yeah, that's
all right,
true.
Scott, are you going to say the line that you know we need to end on?
Yeah, it's I want to get the exact line. One thing about living in Santa Carla, I can never stomach all the damn vampires.